I taught my bird to whistle like a referee. I can make a free throw when I'm down on one knee. I've been a fan of basketball since I was 5. Now I am a fan of HoopSpeak Live. Hilarious analysis, a mystifying trope. An angel with a cudgel breaking bubbles of soap. Like honeybees buzzing around a hive. Everybody buzzing about HoopSpeak Live.
Welcome to HoopSpeak Live. I'm your host, Beckley Mason. With me, Ethan Sherwood Strauss and Zach Harper. Our guest today is $1 Million Mike Mazzeo from ESPN New York. He covers the Nets and has been witness to Deron Williams embarrassing me for the last 2 weeks. So we'll discuss that. But first, we should get to our sponsor, which is, of course, The General Auto Insurance. For a great low rate you can get online, head to The General and save some time. I think we need to start off this episode by talking about this commercial that we've been seeing a lot. It's like the most low-rent commercial imaginable, and there's the one that I want to focus on, guys. I know you've seen it, is where the guy gets the lamp put on his head because he doesn't know about car insurance, but then they just keep talking about renters and car insurance, and he just stands there with the lampshade on his head. Do you have thoughts on this?
Well, I guess I'm confused. Is this a new thing for you? Because I've seen the general auto insurance things for probably 10 or 15 years. Like, I feel like maybe they started in California. I mean, I've seen them for a long time because I used to see them during, I don't know, watching I Love Lucy on Saturday mornings or in the morning during summer break. So the general that's a long time friend. I wouldn't bash the general.
Look, I'm not trying to bash the general. I'm not trying to say this is like a new thing. I'm just saying that for whatever reason, this lampshade iteration of the commercial is driving me insane. I think it's like a weird sketch that like doesn't quite come together, but they just play it thousands of times.
Two things drive me insane about those just commercials in general. Number one is your suspension of disbelief is just totally shattered by somebody being that stupid. You can't believe it. It's just not something you can accept. The other one is when people are talking to either appliances or animals, and they're not completely tripped out by that. Or if the appliance or animal is talking to them, there's a, oh, really? I should clean that, toilet? I should clean it? Not like, oh my God, a toilet is talking to me. What is going on? There's just none of that. People completely accept it in their lives. And that's my pet peeve. But out here on the West Coast, I haven't seen this lampshade commercial. I feel like I'm missing out. It might be.
Oh my gosh!
Everywhere.
All right, if someone who's watching or James can grab that, maybe we can send it to Ethan and have him live react to it at some point. But first, let's get to the big news. Besides the huge Heat win, was Andrew Bynum is officially not coming back. Some people snarkily tweeting, let's just call it a career-ending surgery and get it over with. It's rough, I mean, going through knee surgery is no fun. But what I want to focus on is whether the Sixers should be getting some of the ridicule that they are for making this move in the first place. Where do you guys stand?
It's tricky. I'm holding out hope that it's an elaborate hoax by Bynum, because I want his knees to be healthy, and so much of the information was communicated to the Sixers and not from the Sixers, so it felt as though Bynum could just be telling them anything, and they would just have to take his word for it. But yes, it indeed seems to be true, and the trade itself, I might write about it, but the trade itself seems fairly cheap for Bynum's services, and maybe this was an instance of too good to be true. It's funny to me that the Philly media narrative is, Iguodala doesn't deserve his contract. And now when this happens, it's, oh my God, we got nothing from Bynum, and we gave up Iguodala for him. I mean, this seems like a pretty good price. They get insurance for Bynum. You lose Vucevic. That's somewhat painful, but those 2 first-rounders aren't going to be any good, frankly, from the position they're drafted from. And, you clear out some cap room, you move it along. Not a big risk.
The kind of insurance they could have used was like lampshade general insurance. But I would say that I don't see what the Sixers did wrong. They weren't really going anywhere. I mean, they had a playoff team, but they didn't have like a chance to build a contender out of what they had. So they shook it up. They got rid of a player who was fighting with his coach or really mad at his coach all the time, and they brought in a potential franchise guy. It hasn't worked out, but at worst, what do? They cleared cap space, and they have the bird rights to a guy who could end up still being a very good player in the league with Andrew Bynum. Like, if anything, they got more options out of what they had before. So I think it's fine. It sucks, but it's fine.
Sure, and we got to remember Ethan. When this trade happened, was wondering whether Dwight Howard was really going to end up being better than Bynum if they both came back and Bynum was more healthy. This was like, it was a 50-50 thing. Which player was going to be more healthy? It seemed like, Bynum was coming off of a better year. He's still very young, and Philly had an opportunity to lock him up in his prime. So, they also don't have the same redundancies that Iguodala and Turner, for instance, sort of present, and Turner's obviously much cheaper than Iguodala. I think some of the weird things are the other moves they made. Nick Young, Kwame Brown, getting rid of Elton Brand, who still probably would be their best front court player besides Thaddeus Young. I think that there are other moves to focus on for them than the Bynum exchange.
Yeah, and one move that looks like they're going to make, but maybe they should have made sooner if Doug Collins has any influence on this process, is that I haven't been impressed with Doug Collins, especially as an offensive coach. His vitriol regarding advanced stats and different ways to view things isn't a good sign. Right now, people in Philadelphia are bemoaning the loss of Vucevic, but he was buried on that bench. Collins didn't see any value in him. And so, and I would also say, and some people on the Sixers blog on SB Nation disagreed with me on this, but Thaddeus Young would be better served as a three-point shooter. He shot around 34% in the league, and then before in college, much better. It seemed like he had that in his arsenal, and Doug Collins is so three-pointer averse that he just had him stop taking them altogether. There are a lot of questionable moves related to Doug Collins that perhaps is squandering as much value as this Bynum trade did.
Yeah, Collins just, sorry, go ahead, Zach.
Collins just isn't that great of a coach. He's not a bad coach, but he's a guy who everywhere he goes, he runs his course within like 3 years. Like he brings a team up, and then he kind of annoys them and pisses them off, and then he loses them and gets fired. And that's really like everywhere he goes. That seems to be the pattern.
Yeah, Collins does have the reputation for 3 years and done. But I wonder, he also seems to, as we saw in that press conference, I mean, he cares about this team in some manner. Maybe it's not the most healthy manner all the time, but it's also kind of like painful to watch this coach torture himself, and you just want to say, like, just have him shoot more threes, or maybe if Jason Richardson had been healthy and they'd had Bynum, and I question the wisdom of pairing Bynum and Collins together in the first place, but this team was built on a hope that didn't come through. Okay, Jason Terry, does he get off easy because of Brandon Knight? I feel like we're desensitized to that dunk because of Knight.
I thought Knight's reaction was less silly, almost. Jason Terry, that play got set up by him getting ripped, by him losing the ball, and then doing a complete 360, and then in a daze, feebly just, I wouldn't even call it jumping towards LeBron. I don't know what was happening there or what he thought he was doing. Brandon Knight, it kind of made sense. Jason Terry, it didn't. The Knight one just looks cooler. It looks more violent and vicious, but Jason Terry does look sillier, and he deserves all the mockery that he is getting from last night to today.
Yeah, he didn't really – I don't think Jason Terry really challenged it, at least not as much as Knight. Like, Knight was trying to tip away the pass. Jason Terry just kind of turned around and walked into a moving 280-pound door. But for me, I love the LeBron dunk, but I'm still in a semi-Brandon Knight refractory period. Like, I can't get too excited about a dunk on just yet.
Yeah, we're still feeling the ripple effects there. All right, now we do have Mike Mazzeo. I already ruined trying to bring on his nickname, but I'm trying to spread this amongst the Nets, beat writers, calling him $1 Million Mike. All right, so let's start with Darren Williams, my BFF. Can you explain, watching me walk into this, and the joy that you've had with Darren Williams?
Yeah, I tried to coach you up, man. I really did. I was like, you have to ask him specific questions. He doesn't like the phrasing on some questions. And you tanked it, man. You really did. It was brutal.
So I've been trying to do a ESPN magazine thing on Darren Williams short, not like a feature, but I needed some quotes from him. And basically, in 3 straight occasions, he shut me down in a group setting where I would try to ask him a question and he would be very curt and then be effusive and nice to everybody else. And I'm wondering, do you know specifically, can you think of why he doesn't like
It was your questioning, man. Your questioning was just brutal. That's all I got to say. I have no idea. I'm just going to treat you like Darren right now. The questioning was horrible.
Yeah, Darren informed me that he appreciated my concern for his health when I tried to ask how his ankles were doing. Anyway, Mike, this is a really weird team, but they have a big opportunity right now. Do you have any sense from being around them all year, we're talking about the Nets, of course, why they are so inconsistent, why they haven't been able to even seem to form like a real identity?
It's a great question. I mean, certainly the coaching change was a big deal, and it seems like they've gotten sort of acclimated to that, but PJ Carlesimo said they're day-to-day, he almost says. I mean, he doesn't know what to expect from them. I don't even know if they expect, to know themselves on a day-to-day basis how they're going to play. I mean, they've just been extremely, inconsistent offensively, I think, a lot of the time, and that's just maybe Darren Williams and Joe Johnson still getting acclimated to one another, still trying to figure out how to work Brook Lopez in the mix, and then this whole power forward glut they have. They really don't have a power forward. They're kind of doing it by committee, and maybe their best power forward, Joe Wallace, is not playing power forward, so that's got to have something to do with it as well.
Yeah, I know you guys have transitioned to talking about actual substantive basketball, but I'm still fascinated by this Darren Williams being mean to Beckley topic, and I don't want to move off it, not for a second. Mike, he has a reputation, Darren Williams, of being sort of a salty, disagreeable guy. Is that so, or is it just so for Beckley? Is all the venom in Beckley's direction, or is it spread out evenly?
Darren Williams is a guy who, if he talks to you a lot and sees you on a daily basis, you kind of develop some trust there. He didn't know who Beckley was, even though Beckley's famous, and I think that got Beckley in trouble a little bit. It wasn't like the guy in Indiana who asked Darren, hey, the Giants and Yankees are both playing really well right now. How much pressure do you feel to live up to them? And he said, oh, so much pressure, man, so much pressure.
Mike, is it possible? I mean, we've heard the Darren Williams thing, and he certainly wasn't the first one to do it, but Beckley did get popped by Greg Popovich. Is Beckley just not a likable person when he's interviewing athletes and coaches?
He just needs to work on his phrasing, man. He's a blogger. He's got to get in the mix, talk to people a lot. That'll help him improve. I mean, he's a big time guy, but he's got to deliver.
Thanks. I really appreciate all of this. Yeah, Darren. The pop thing. I was sort of like. It was like a moment where I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like, I'm getting like this, NBA experience with Darren. I'm like, dude, I'm out in East Rutherford, New Jersey. It's terrible. Like, please just give me a quote.
I mean, what are you going to do? The guy's tearing it up right now. He can kind of treat you however he wants. I mean, he's averaging 23.5 since the All-Star break, and he's finally playing well. So I think it's allowed. I'm okay with what he did to you.
Oh, appreciate it. All right. Talking about the power forwards, they tried Mirza Teletovic a little bit. Chris Humphries, I don't know why he's completely out of the rotation. PJ Carlesimo doesn't seem like the most confrontational coach. Like, how do you think he's handling, not playing certain guys at all who were playing major minutes earlier in the season?
I guess you could say having too much depth is a good problem to have. I mean, Humphries was out of the rotation when Avery was the coach. Then he kind of got a second chance, worked his way back in, and he struggled. I mean, you look at his numbers across the board; they're just not that good. I mean, he's shooting like converting like 40% of his layups, 33% of his jumpers. I mean, if Chris Humphries could make a 14-foot jumper consistently, he'd do something this team does not have. They do not have a big man that can really do that. Brook will obviously do it occasionally, but I think they'd like to see him post up more. I mean, his 20-foot post-ups are great to watch, but, it's probably not the most efficient way to score the basketball. So, I mean, certainly Marshawn Brooks, too. It's like, well, they have this talented kid who, makes mistakes occasionally, but he can score 20 on any given night, and then they'll play him 18 minutes one night, 2 minutes the next. So the rotation is still, in flux, which is not good when you're 2/3 of the way or 3/4 of the way, whatever we are through the season.
The talk before the season when they were making the move and they acquired all these guys and spent all this money was they've got to find a way to compete with the Knicks in terms of branding around the city. And now they're basically the same team in terms of they're only a game apart, that either one could win the division. Neither team is expected to make any real noise in the playoffs. Have people gravitated towards the Nets from your experience and your perspective, or is it still very much Knicks are first and Nets are like a far second?
Probably that one. Probably the Knicks are first and the Nets are far second. But I mean, when I wrote the logo story about how they changed, I mean, that story was getting picked up by everybody. It got, a ton of hits. I mean, certainly the buzz is growing, but at the same time, I mean, I couldn't even tell you that ratio. I mean, you do see more Nets stuff in the city, which is awesome. But I think they still obviously have a long way to go. And if the two teams end up meeting in the playoffs, whether it's the first round or second round, I mean, the Nets win that series. I mean, that's certainly a big step. But again, you're talking first year in Brooklyn versus a team that is extremely established and probably the most recognizable NBA franchise not named, LA or Boston around.
You said that Deron Williams can essentially do what he wants, and that includes abusing Beckley. With his recent run of great play, do you think that he is finally in the minds of the fans validated that big contract? I know Bill Simmons cited that as one of the worst contracts. What's the sense around there about if he's lived up to expectations?
Well, I mean, certainly the first 50 games when he was struggling through the ankle injuries and the wrist injuries and every other injuries, you name a body part, it was hurt. He's averaging like 16 points on 40% shooting. I mean, that's not going to get it done, obviously, but I mean, he got he took the week off. That was obviously the key. He got dominated by Tony Parker right before the break and said, that's the last straw. I got to get this right. So he sat out the 2 games. He got the third set of cortisone shots at both ankles, so they finally got it in the right place. He did the PRP treatment, and then he did the 3-day juice cleanse, and now he's playing at 204 pounds compared to whatever he was before. He's very sensitive about his weight, and he's very sensitive about injuries, which is understandable. I mean, anybody would be. But, he's averaging 23.5, and his, field goal percentage is at 47%. He's shooting a 3-ball like he's never shot it before. It's probably unsustainable, but, I mean, every game it's unreal how many threes this guy's hitting. So, he's playing like the point guard that signed that 5-year, $98 million deal. He's making everybody around him better. And if he continues to play this way, I mean, you'd have to put him in that conversation with Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, Tony Parker, among the top point guards in this league, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I think the sense was that when they came to Brooklyn, he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He was going to be not just kind of the face of the franchise, but the defining player, and that, he would be the fan draw. Like, as good as Brook Lopez and Joe Johnson can be, like, they're not exactly big draws from an entertainment perspective. They're like kind of back it down post players, make jump shots. Deron, with the crossover, with the explosiveness, is the most creative player by far on their team. Do you think that basically, like, part of what's happened, even though they've won so many games, that they've just been really boring because Deron can't do what he wants to do?
Sure. I mean, they're running basically the same offense they ran under Avery, under PJ. So it's a lot of ISO. It's a lot of, Deron will pick and roll with Brook or something like that. Then they'll feed the ball into Brook 18 feet out and let him go ISO, or Joe at the top of the key and let him go ISO. So, yeah, I mean, it's not exactly the most pretty basketball. They're, probably last in the league in transition scoring. They've had, like, 5 alley-oops all year, so they're not the LA Clippers by any means. And, but they are 11 games over. People do forget that, tend to forget that, because I think they've been kind of playing 500 basketball since they got up to the 12-2 start under PJ.
Because there's so much money tied up, and they do, at least right now, appear to have a ceiling unless Deron Williams gets back to being, like, really good Utah Deron Williams. Is there any worry or concern that they're basically becoming the new Atlanta Hawks, or do people just say, hey, we're happy to have a team, they're good, they're a playoff team?
Well, I mean, you got to remember they haven't made the playoffs since, 2007, so they're certainly doing something right in that respect. I mean, they were when Prokhorov brought the team, they were 12-70, and now at least they're relevant. I mean, they sort of paid for relevancy. I mean, they're in the conversation with the Knicks. They do have $330 million in contract guarantees tied up, and I mean, that's going to certainly limit them. I mean, what team that doesn't have LeBron James and Kevin Durant right now is excited about what they got, besides like maybe San Antonio? And there's just not that many teams in this league that have a chance to win a championship every year. There's certainly, occasionally you have your Detroit Pistons, your Dallas Mavericks that do something they're not supposed to do, but ultimately the teams with the superstars that are going to win, and if you don't have those guys, it's going to be tough. I mean, they have a great team. They have a playoff team. In the East, there's obviously parity at 2 through 8, and then you have the Heat who won 23 in a row and look like they're going to win the championship again. But, can the Nets reach the Eastern Conference Finals and play the Heat? They got just as good a chance as anybody.
Mike, I'm going off the board here. It's not going to be Nets related. You talk incredibly fast. It's an admirable skill. You're a very quick-talking man. And I'm wondering, is that just the sort of Northeast kind of New York reporter culture where you talk that fast? And maybe that's what's screwing up Beckley as a West Coast guy. Do you think that there could be something to that?
Well, Darren's from Dallas, so I don't know if it has anything to that. Maybe Darren's becoming an East Coast guy, and he's used to the quick talking. I don't know.
That's why we call him $1 Million. He gets up there like, Darren, what do you think about the old Charleston? You think they're playing out there? It looks like they're moving the feet, doing the old gym buggy.
That's how it takes East Coast reporting.
Exactly. Scoops Callahan.
I got nothing for you guys.
Well, it gets weird. This isn't ESPN New York.
I don't even know what I said on this. I don't even know where this is going to end up.
Well, unfortunately, we have to end it up here. Thanks a lot for dropping by.
Man, anytime. I'm so glad you guys had me on, and you embarrassed me on national TV. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, this is national TV. $1 Million Mike Mazzeo. Thank you. We'll follow you on Twitter and on ESPN New York. All right. That guy cracks me up. All right, let's talk about this Miami game last night, which everyone obviously is on everybody's mind today. The Heat. It looked like we finally saw LeBron in an intensity level a sustained intensity level that we don't get to see very often. It makes you wonder if they only played once every 5 days or something. Like, is that the kind of basketball we would get to see all the time?
Beckley, that's the question that you came up with? I mean, that's very interesting. We talked about a bunch of angles for this game before. I was not anticipating one about rest. Where did that come from? I'm just
curious, I was like, why can we see this all the time? Like, wouldn't you rather do that?
Well, there might be something to that. Maybe that explains Jeff Green's game. I don't know why the Heat resting would do it, but maybe the Celtics got some rest before that. That's what I took away from it, was that Jeff Green suddenly became a superstar, if not for a moment, which was totally befuddling. My favorite thing is that somebody out there tweeted that he just needed the opportunities, which was just hilarious to me because Jeff Green has gotten so many opportunities over the years, over the past 6 seasons, and for maybe it's the playing small, maybe that opened it up for him, but he finally realized that driving to the hoop is a good thing, and it worked out beautifully.
I was a little worried about LeBron during the game because in the last 2 to 3 minutes, he had 2 pretty bad possessions in which he isolated against Green and really couldn't get anything going. And I started to think maybe he's pressing again. Maybe this is, he just can't figure it out in Boston for some reason. And then he knocks down the jumper and all the narratives go out the window. Now we have a new narrative that 5 days rest LeBron could be as effective as Ponzi scheme Beckley.
No one's as effective as Ponzi scheme Beckley. First,
it'd be so funny if I was wondering if that Wojnarowski column was "and 5 days of rest" is what did it. It just all centered around 5 days of rest as the main animating force for this LeBron James brilliance. But continue.
Well, all right. If you guys don't want to talk about. You don't want to talk about the impact of rest and quality of play, fine. Let's talk about something that is really important. Chalmers. Chalmers balling. Chalmers is good.
Yes. Yeah, Chalmers is good. Yeah, I don't know if he's clutch. I don't know if clutch exists, but it feels like he is. Don't you kind of feel like Chalmers? He's impervious with his delusions of grandeur. He's impervious to pressure. His hands are so fast. If we were ranking hand fastness, hand speed in the league, he would maybe be top 5. Hand fastness. It's an old boxing term. Hand fastness. Joe Louis had the best hand fastness of all.
Go ahead. Yeah, what do you think of your hand fastness tonight?
Mario Chalmers is absolutely clutch. He hit a game-winning shot in the title game of an NCAA tournament. Like, this is as clutch as you can get. That's all anybody ever remembers. He beat Derrick Rose. He's better than Derrick Rose in the clutch. That's all I remember about him.
Chalmers is an interesting case for me because he's such like a molded player. You imagine that if Chalmers could play in any way he wanted, it would not be this way. Like this is like Chalmers getting to be the best iteration of himself, but not the self he would choose to be. Like he gets to shoot threes, which he's shooting at 40% or something. He gets to attack. And he gets to be, wreak havoc on defense. And, so they've basically figured out how to develop him into the player that he's become. And, back when the Heat got together and was like, okay, they're just going to put all these veterans around them and then they're going to dominate. It turns out that, having, obviously, Battier and other guys, but, Chalmers is a player who, if they got this talent as a veteran, would be nowhere near as effective as the player who's grown around this really weird environment and become very effective.
He's really the only
watching Chalmers.
Okay. I was about to say he's really the only guy of the guys they built around who justified his contract outside of the big 3. Those other ones are disastrous with Haslam and Mike Miller. But Chalmers has worked out. And I also want to say there's something sort of gawky about Chalmers where he might conceive of himself as the superstar, but it seems like he's kind of got these Tin Man arms. He doesn't have the fluidity or the grace with which he moves. What? You're smirking at me, but there's got to be something to this. There has to be a reason why Chalmers is Chalmers as opposed to whoever Chalmers thinks he is.
There's got to be something to him having Tin Man arms. I was going to say, you talk about him kind of being molded into this role, and he wouldn't be like this if given the choice. It reminds me if you're training a puppy how to be patient, and you put a treat in front of him, but you don't let him move towards the treat. Taking shots that's the treat for Chalmers, and you're always telling him, no, stay, wait, and then you're waiting to give him the okay, and then he just unleashes on it. That's kind of how he seems to play next to LeBron and Dwayne Wade.
Interesting. I'm sure you would love to hear you explain that metaphor to him. No, Mario. You're not a 25-year-old athlete who's won a championship. You're a little puppy.
That would be incredible.
No, it is funny because he occupies the Derek Fisher role, except for no one thinks of Mario as this cerebral team leader. You know what I mean? But basically they do the same things. I want to talk about last night was a great example of Wade and Bosh getting no attention.
Yes.
They didn't play great games, but Wade did do some really nice things in the fourth quarter, and Bosh got his ankles broken and fell down and had a shot hit over him, and no one remembers it.
Yeah.
Because not only because the game ended, but because LeBron was there to have that huge dunk, and then LeBron was there to win the game.
Yeah, and I hated your transition to the rest, but this is a great transition, Beckley. I think this is a brilliant transition by you, and I'm very happy about it. And I wonder if this is ever going to cause any resentment. I'm no pop psychologist, but when Pat Riley himself talks about the disease of more, the disease of me, how guys want more credit after the massive credit for the team that comes with a championship happens. I wonder at all if Wade is a little resentful just because it's gone from people arguing that perhaps it's Wade's team as a way to slam or diss LeBron, Wade outplaying LeBron in the 2011 finals, outplaying every player in the 2011 finals, to no matter what Wade does, he's been incredible on this win streak. He was incredible in last night's fourth quarter, making huge assists and huge rebounds. And nobody cares. It's like Wade has been erased from the national consciousness. So I wonder and I speculate if if he likes that or if that grates on him a bit.
Well, I think there's something about the way that Wade scores now that, like, it's so easy for him sometimes, it looks, and if it's off a cut or off, he's splitting the pick and roll or whatever, and playing next to LeBron makes things easy on his teammates. And so I think there's this belief that, like, it's almost as though if Wade was shooting a lower percentage but scoring more, and it looked like he had to do it more himself,
Yeah.
that people would think that he was playing better. Like, it's almost that his ease and the efficiency with which he plays, which should be great things and should, show like how great of a player he is, seems to signal that he has it too easy.
Yeah. I think that's a great thought, and so much of that ease comes from the chemistry between. That was genuine. That wasn't patronizing. That was from the heart. But so much of that ease comes from the fantastic chemistry between Wade and LeBron. There was so much speculation about whether or not they could play together, and what we're seeing is that they almost have a telepathic communication, like the Sedin twins in hockey. I believe that still exists. I stopped paying attention to hockey about a year or two ago. I don't. But that could be so. But that's the first analogy that I came up with, and maybe not enough attention is given to when we're comparing tandems like Westbrook, Durant, and Wade and LeBron, that the latter tandem really complements each other.
Zach, you got anything to add?
I just can't believe they're doing this without Dexter Pittman. It still shocks me.
Excellent. All right, guys, we got to wrap it up. This was a fun episode. On Thursday, we have David Locke, and we're going to be talking Jazz.
Awesome.
A really weird team that's starting to frustrate the hell out of me.
And please me. Very happy about the Jazz.
Exactly. All right, thanks to $1 Million Mike Mazzeo, Zach Harper, Ethan Sherwood Strauss, James Herbert, Anthony Bain. I'm Beckley Mason. Roger Bain, take us out.
I taught my bird to whistle like a referee. I can make a free throw when I'm down on one knee. I've been a fan of basketball since I was 5. Now I am a fan of HoopSpeak Live. Hilarious analysis, a mystifying trope. An angel with a cudgel breaking bubbles of soap. Like honeybees buzzing around a hive. Everybody buzzing about hoop